you're skeptical of the state, you're getting over the myth of authority. But the state is still formidable. Or is it? You've got a front row seat in the transition to a free society. Let's dive headfirst into The White Pill Box with your host, Mark Maresca.
Greetings all. Thank you so much for joining today. Today I am happy to welcome Mark Puls. Welcome, Mark, to The White Pill Box.
How are you doing, sir? Mark, it's great seeing you again. We had you on our show a couple of weeks ago. What a blast. You invited us on. Unfortunately, Jake's having some challenges, but we're praying for him, and he's okay. He's safe. But you'll have him on later, and I'm so blessed to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining. And yes, Jake will schedule with me shortly, so he'll be on soon too. Folks, Mark Sean Puls is none other than the unapologetic voice behind Knock the Conscious and If by Whiskey, two podcasts that refuse to play nice with bad ideas. Mark holds real conversations, smart, raw, sometimes chaotic, sometimes always honest. He brings the perfect mix of humor, bite, and did he really just say that? He did. His show websites are ifbywhiskey.com and knockedconscious.com.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me. So excited. We had you on a couple of weeks ago. Jake obviously had a little bit of a hiccup, but he will be on your show again. I'm just blessed to be here. Thank you so much.
I am really glad to have you, and I'll be looking forward to Jake as well. So, folks, as Mark said, he was kind enough to have me on the show recently as a guest, along with Jake, and I had a really fun time. I think we will have a fun time today as well here on the White Pill Box. Mark, let me get right to the first question I love to ask everyone, which is how you came to libertarianism and capism, whatever you'd like to call it, assuming you label yourself that.
So I grew up, long story, even longer. My parents are German, both of them. My dad was born in 1940 Germany, in Hamburg. My mom was born in 1944. My mom's father was a Nazi soldier. My dad's father was a civil engineer. In 1940 in Hamburg, the bombs were being dropped. So my family walked hand in hand. My grandmother, 5 kids, hand in hand from Hamburg to Berlin. One of them passed on the way of malnutrition. My grandmother's just like, I didn't have anything left. So my dad was like, loved my mother, because obviously going through that together, I can't even imagine what that's like. On my other grandfather's side, on my mother's side, 1944, she was born in Hohndorf, which is about 60 to 70 miles away from Dresden. So Dresden, obviously, we know what happened at Dresden. She has stories of people telling her they saw the flames. I mean, that's how close it was to their house. And she was born, a year after, because I think Dresden was like 40 or 45. He was born in 44. So anyway, what happened there after they lost the war, the Germans, America decided to give Russia half its portion. So East Germany developed. Well, my mom was on the side of East Germany. So now my grandfather, grandmother, and mom are on East Germany. 1953 comes around. My mom hands my grandfather, a pamphlet of the Young Stalin movement. And she told me what it was. I forget what it was. It was when we talked about it. My grandfather ripped it up in front of her. And her childhood friend ratted on her to his dad. So his dad comes to his house and he's like, they're looking at you. You got to go. So he doesn't tell his family, nobody. He leaves on his own on a business trip. And back in the day, people don't know that physically West Berlin, which is a sovereign piece, was physically inside of East Berlin or East Germany. So even if you were in West Berlin, you could not drive through because they would just arrest you. You'd have to actually fly out, right? So you have to get into West Berlin and then get out somehow. So 53 comes around. My mom, aunt, and grandmother go on a train on a separate family trip to Berlin. They can't carry anything with them, anything conspicuous, right? These 2 young girls come on with suitcases full, bedding, all this, you know that they're leaving, right? Soldiers came up and grabbed them. My mom said she watched them get taken off the train and didn't come back on, and she didn't even know what, she was freaking out. She didn't even know what was going on. They weren't going to tell her because, it would have cost them. Anyway, so that happens. So they escape East Germany, and then they come to America in 1955. So my mom lived under the tyranny of Stalin, Hitler, and Eisenhower. You got to live under the greatness of Eisenhower. One of the history's, let's say greatest in general, men. And I'm here. I have no idea how I'm here. My dad, 19, leaves Germany, comes here on his own, goes to enlist in the military because he thinks that's the quickest pathway to citizenship, doesn't speak English. Okay, this is 1959. 1945, 14 years earlier, my dad's German people were killing Jewish people, right? It was a Jewish person, I think it was Schwartz, who was in the military. My dad didn't speak English. The sergeant would bark English orders. The Schwartz guy would translate them into Yiddish, and my dad could half understand. So like they built like this weird bond, and it's like this weird thing where it's like you look at these people in the Holocaust, for example, and these people who are completely on opposite ends. But no, the humans weren't. These groups were, right? These individual two humans found a way to survive together after their peoples had this conflict for so long. And to watch that part, just hearing that is so beautiful and so America, right? So I grew up very conservative because first of all, my parents grew up conservative under Hitler. So, the fascism was more conservative order and all that. So they're much more into that. Then they got to live under communism, and communism is the worst. If you have not lived under it, it is the worst. Anyone who's lived under it will tell you it is the worst. There's nothing worse than straight up communism. So when they came here, we raised very conservative, right? So I was a grade A neocon, man. I had a taste it on this studs for you T-shirt. I voted Bush won 92, and he lost to Clinton. That was my first. I read it elephant all the way through until last year, which I voted no to. For the first time, I deprogrammed. I voted none of the above. And it took time, but the transition was I was, lesser of two evils, right? First of all, grade A neocon. So blow them up, kill them. We're going to force our freedom on them. They want our freedom. They hate us for our freedom. They're not over here because we're over there. They're over here because they hate us. All that. The same rhetoric we're hearing now with Venezuela. And, weapons of mass destruction just made a comeback, by the way. Thanks a lot.
I saw that. Yeah.
And then you have people defending it, by the way, on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's uncanny. They're like, they never heard this before. It's so silly. So going forward, it was the Martha McSally, Kyrsten Sinema Senate race in Arizona. Martha McSally was like a military person, and Kyrsten Sinema was like the weird independent woman that turned with pharma. Anyway, they had these ad campaigns, and it was like 2016 or 18, I forget the year. They were so ugly that I can't vote for either of these two people. And the second I got that in my head, I realized I don't have to vote for any human being ever again because they're all trash. Because anyone who wants power certainly doesn't deserve it. Certainly does. You earn it by being the leader. It's like liberty. You have to be the liberty you want to see. You can't just talk about it and tell people to be free. You have to live it. So I started to deprogram as a whole. And as I deprogrammed, I got to go to things like Freedom Fest and Ron Paul's barbecue, for example. I got to go. So I had these great experiences that I really put myself out there to meet Scott Horton and Dave Smith and Dan McKnight and Liam McCallum, Dan McWilliams, Daniel McAdams, all these great voices. Ron Paul was there. Tulsi Gabbard was there. And you just suck in it's exchange of ideas. It's not about beliefs. It's not even opinions. It's like, tell me what you think and let's share the idea versus you're wrong for what you think. No, it's like, tell me what you think. Let's figure it out. So I came to it in a very unique way from the right. And I'm finding a lot of people coming from the left. And what's funny is I get called a libtard so often because of my stances now. And I'm probably more conservative than 90% of the people who are calling me out on it. So it's pretty funny. So that's how I got into libertarian.
Yeah. Do you see yourself, because I'm noticing this a little more now in this era than I remember in the past, namely, tell me if this is consistent with your experience, that you sort of evolved to it slowly. I will say, it used to seem more like that people would have more of a quick aha moment. And is that how it was with you? A little slower and gradual?
Yeah. What it does is it starts with a trickle, then it does just exacerbate, accelerates exponentially, but then you break.
Okay.
So that exponential curve is different for everyone. But for me, it's not hard because to your point, I'm a pattern recognition guy. I'm not a dummy. None of us are dummies. We see what's great about libertarianism is we see the follies well before they happen. Because we can tell you if you push this, that's going to pop out. Or if you pull that, that's going to go down. We see causality. We understand human nature and all these things. So when, I just lost my thought on that. Gosh darn it.
Was there any point where you could say that it hit you that the state is morally illegitimate. I guess
Yes.
that's what I want to hone in on, like that,
Yes.
that almost that
100%.
moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the moment.
Tell me
So
about that.
I come out of the grade A neocon. Okay. Now
Yes.
I'm homeless, but I'm political, right? So I'm politically homeless. I have to find a home. So where do I go? I'm not going to go with the progressives. I mean, come on. These people are, I don't even know. I don't even know. There's nothing grounded in reality there. There's just none. So libertarians seem right. So I got hooked up with Mike Rechtenwald, who was running for president. And Mike Rechtenwald should have won that LNC national convention, by the way. He should have won the presidential. He won the first 5 rounds until Mike Termet turned his back on him like a little bitch. I'll call him out. I don't care because he's a little Mike Mises shit ball. Fuck him. I'm sorry. But and you can bleep me out. I don't care. But I've had with Termet. I met Chase Oliver. I get vibes off people. These people are slime. So I meet them at Freedom Fest. We go to the rounds of election, right? I'm watching online on LNC. They got Trump to show up, man. That's an amazing feat for the libertarians to get someone like Donald Trump to actually show up at their place. So I thought libertarians were going to win this thing. I thought Rec was going to go. I thought it was going to be Rec and Clint Russell. And that's what we were going to run with, right? So then round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then that 6th round where it flips and Termat looks at Rec. Rec goes, "You're not going to stab me in the back, are you?" He goes, "No, I'm not." And then he goes up and stabs him in the back. And you're like, okay, cool, great. So all I saw, that was my snap. Because I'm like, oh, the parties are all the same. Even the one that says they're not the other party. Even the party that says they're not the party is still the party. Because they all play the same game mentally with humans as, to figure out their way in, And
Right.
it literally was that. I was like, at that thing, I'm like, oh, none of this is legitimate. None of it. None of it. And then once you start thinking that, now you can go back in the literature and go, oh, do you directly vote for a president, Mark? Oh, you vote for an elector. You don't even vote for your president. You know what I mean? So like, let's start there. So don't act like you're voting, like you're powerful anymore. And it's not that you're not, it's just you're not in this way. This isn't the way to enact your power. It's to be powerful, not to act, vote for it.
Right.
I guess.
So that's your wake up call right there.
That was it. It really was that even the Libertarian Party are the Republicans and the Democrats. You know what I mean? And it's not wrong. It's humans. So like, just look, take a step back. If I had the power to do something, I'd wield it. You would too. So knowing that I would do that, why would you give me power? And knowing that you wouldn't give me power to do that, why would you give anyone that power to do it? If you can't take that next step, I can't help you anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a clear step, a natural, to your point, it is evolutionary, but there is a snap. There is a deprogramming point where now I just sit there. I'm like, I can't vote for you. I'll vote on propositions, direct ballot measures, but I'm not voting for another human being. And that includes, I will support Thomas Massey to the ends of the earth. I love that man. I won't vote for him. But I will support him and I will encourage him to run. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at. I just can't do it anymore. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
Okay, so I want to press on this because I find this such an interesting aspect of this movement. So you have people, and I classify myself in this group. I will not participate in politics in any way. We could say the rare exception would be the theoretical referendum where they give an unequivocal choice between victimization and not victimization, or victimization and less victimization. We're going to lower property taxes by half, and no other details written into that law that has some kind of offsetting. Okay, well, here you could just say, okay, well, then this is morally equivalent to being in a concentration camp and being given a choice to have milk instead of water. You're going to pick it because you want your life to be right, and you're not creating.
That's exactly where I'm at. I would pick that proposition. If that proposition were on the table, I would choose to halve our income tax.
Okay, and then there's others, and everyone gets to make their own choices in this, but there's others who say, no, I want to participate in politics, even in the electoral politics, because this guy might be lesser of two evil, or he might push the needle forward, whatever the reasoning is, and they proceed to participate, even though in principle it's a mafia and you're sort of picking a mafia chief, or it's a slave plantation, you're picking your master. They are willing to do that action, even though it has that moral component. My question would be this. It wouldn't be for you if you're not in that group, but speculate for me. Is there any point where the government can be such that they would say, I'm not participating. Because clearly that point is not now, because they are participating. Is there some nature of government or aspect of it that could happen where they would say, you know what, I am done. I will not participate on moral grounds. Do you think that's possible? Or do you think they would participate no matter how evil that government would be? What's your thoughts?
Well, we've seen movements, we've seen revolutions, we've seen a lot of actions done throughout history. Every movement has a tipping point. If you can get to a certain percentage of whatever that percentage is, then it can kind of take over the movement. Maybe it's like 10, 20%, something like that. So if we can just be that, if we can live our lives that way and continue sharing the messages that those people that you're voting for whom you're voting, they are not the lesser, they are just evil, and that we should live this way. If we can all start slowly not voting, then voting goes down, even though they still have their overlords. But now we can then transition to let's not pay our income tax. So if we get 20% of people not paying income tax or 30%, what's that going to do? How are they going to handle that, right? And then seeing a government's reaction to that, now we're the victims, now we're the martyrs. We actually are the ones that they're attacking. And if people can't take that side of the what's it, the underdog, I don't know what's wrong. It's nothing more American than the underdog, right? And that's us. Every conversation, we are the underdog. And all we're asking is don't give anyone power to do anything. Take accountability, take responsibility, and have grace between each other. When you mess up, be transparent, be honest. And when someone messes up to you and owns it, have the grace to accept their apology. This is how it is. The problem is we understand that conflict will always happen, but it's how we resolve the conflict that is the problem with large government. And it's funny you mentioned the mafia thing. I actually watched the documentary about the government with my girlfriend. It's called The Sopranos. So every time we watch this, I'm like, "Hey, you see that right there? That's called taxes by the government. Oh, you see that? That's called law. That's called law and order. This part is called protecting you. Oh, this is for your safety. Oh, this is for your children and your women. you know. So watching this any mafia show shows you how the government works.
It's funny you bring up a minute ago the participation thing. We, the principal, get scolded a whole lot because we're living in Ancapistan in our head. We're living in theory in our head. Whereas those who participate are calling themselves the adults in the room, grounded in reality. We live in the concrete world, right? So they're using it as a pejorative, of course, against those who are principled. But, they're trying to come off as the adults, which means they're grounded in reality. Nothing they ever do results in the real world in practical results. So even though they voted for Trump, let's say, they're not getting what they actually would like to see in the direction of free society. So their practical approach fails constantly. That is not really good advertising for holding yourself up as the practical one. It seems to me that there's only one fundamental act that you can take that is practical, and that is refraining from voting, because that literally takes away the empowerment of you to them. You can do that as a practical matter by refraining. And if that message were to bleed out and that were to influence others to not act in support of that system, that adds to the delegitimization of that system. To me, I don't see anything more practical than that.
Neither do I. And what's better than someone in our field? And now it's not us right now, but we work on the message, right? The message is what matters. How we deliver it. If I just point at you and say you're wrong, you're stupid, they're not going to listen. You have to figure out a way, right? So not only do you have to figure out a way to tell them that it's not correct the way they're going, you have to coax them into going a different direction. So it's like it's a double-edged sword for us to really try to convince people and coerce people, because we're not about aggression. We want the idea to fester, and we want nothing's better than them coming to the conclusion that you led them to. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Now you might know that you're going to lead them there, right? But if they don't know it and then they have an epiphany, how much stronger is that personal epiphany they have versus you giving it to them? So what you
Right.
try to do is you tease around the outside and let them have the holy shit moment. You don't tell them the holy shit moment. You have to build the fire around that to let that be uh, able to happen, I guess, right? You have
Yes.
to set the
Yes. Yes.
conditions for it to happen. Versus, and then when they decide that, when they break, then you've got a teammate for life because they came to that. You didn't make them go there.
Exactly right. Exactly. What you're doing there when you're doing that particular tactic is deprogramming them in, well, I was going to say parallel to cults, but it literally is the same psychological deprogramming that happens when a person is taken out, or their mind is freed of the cult thinking. If you just think
It's
about
like
any,
exactly the same thing, but backwards process. The process is exactly opposite and without malicious intent.
exactly, exactly. So if we imagine a person who wants to help a loved one come out of a cult, what's the worst thing they could do is to bully them against the cult and say that cult is evil. Well, the person is only going to double down. Why? Because in their head, there's this false self that's been indoctrinated to somehow believe that this cult is saving the world, saving them, the best thing ever. And the only way that they can come out of that is themselves. They had to. Now, maybe you can hold their hand out of that, but they have to come out of it. And the cult or belief in statism, the belief or myth of political authority, is exactly that. We are essentially cult indoctrinated into it from birth, not because there's a cult leader at the top turning dials and, like a Dr. Evil or whatever. It isn't like that. It's just that all the culture happy. Yes, exactly right. The culture just happens to be that way, and we get indoctrinated. And that's why the best approach is to changing people's minds is really not changing their minds. It's getting them to be introduced, so to speak, to their inner anarchist, because there's an inner anarchist in there, what I call the true self. And it's only the fog that separates the false self from the true self that has to be cleared. So I agree with approaches like that.
Yeah, I love that. And just to double down on that is what's I'm not a person, I don't have beliefs. I have ideas, I have opinions because I am capable of change. I don't think the same way I did 5, 10 minutes ago, 5, 10 years ago, 5, 10 months ago. We're all different. My challenge with belief is when you adopt a belief, that belief becomes a part of yourself. And any attack on the belief feels like an attack on you. So as the holder of the belief, you now feel attacked. So I try to never come up, what do you believe? I don't no, tell me your thoughts. What do you think? What are your opinions? Because opinions can be malleable. They don't have to be anchored to something. They can be ethereal, and then once you adopt them, then you can take them and put them in your pocket. So we can play in a playground in the sandbox here instead of directly on each other. Because it feels like when we're attacking ideas, we're attacking the people who believe those ideas. Because the belief is the attachment. That's the attachment ego part. And we need to decouple those two things. You are not your ideas. You have ideas. That's it. And those ideas are either have merit or less merit. And that's where we should look at it. It's not about the person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And here's an interesting thing too. I think libertarians, and I fully fall into this camp. We think that once we're red pilled, we have it all figured out. We have it all wired. Of course, we don't in terms of life. We don't have it in terms of strategy. We don't. We just have been cleared of a particular fog or indoctrinated belief in our head that the state is legitimate and indeed it ought not to exist. That I would assume would be the common thread of all anarchists, right? But beyond that, how you live your own life, or how you would want others to live, or what culture you'd like to live in, or the strategic way to spread your ideas. That's all a matter of you figuring out how to do that on your own. There's no one right way to do that. And I think the libertarians may sometimes fall into the idea that there is only one right way to do it. Do you notice that yourself?
I do. I don't know if did you have a chance to watch Dave Smith and Liquid Zulu have a debate at
Yes,
all?
I
Okay,
did
did you
watch
watch it
that.
with
Yes.
Jacob Winograd? So Jacob was
Yes.
was the moderator, right? So Jacob's a
Correct.
real great
Yes.
guy. Jacob's part of the Libertarian Christian Institute. He and I did an 8-part book, provoked book series with Scott Horton. So Jacob's a great stand-up guy. Now the Liquid Zulu thing, he's that. To your point, he's that in the air ethereal libertarian. But Dave does have some practicality, and like he talked about the children thing, and it's true. I'm sorry if you don't have a child, it is a different direct thing when a child is trying to demand of you something. You know what I mean? When you actually have power over another human being as you do over a child, it does have a different perspective, but it doesn't change our philosophies because you and I see the value of that. So we can look beyond that. But it is interesting because Liquid Zulu was very part of the not practical. I think Dave was more practical, right? And Liquid Zulu was more principled.
Theoretical, yeah, sure.
And what did you think about that? Well, could I get your thoughts on that? What do you thought of those two?
Well, I'm gonna be very honest with you. My perspective on that. So what we have for the audience who's not familiar is that we had basically a powerful representative of the liberty movement right now, Dave Smith, who I believe he understands the essential principles of libertarianism and anarchism. He also showcases what you would say the incrementalist approach, which is the way to get to liberty or the way to spread the ideas is to do it slowly, systematically, try to get it out there slowly, which means that there is room for compromise in the world of politics. Okay, Liquid Zulu is, as you said, very much theoretical. He prides himself on sticking to libertarian principles. And so with principles, you're dealing with morality, right and wrong. And as long as you know what situation you're dealing with, you should be able to judge the morality of a particular situation and come out the other end with a judgment. And in his view, politics is immoral, so you do not participate in it. And it's that's the end of that. From there, they examine some of the implications of what the non-aggression principle might mean. And they ultimately land on examples, which I don't like these examples, but if you could steal a penny and save the entire human race, would you steal the penny? And a principled answer to that says yes. No, you would not steal the penny because you're creating a victim.
Because you're thief, right?
Right. So I don't like those. I don't think they are realistic in any way. To me, and you asked the question, what did I think of it? If the whole debate had been about let's hone libertarian principles, let's take this sword of libertarian principles and sharpen it. Let's examine what the principles mean and talk about that. I would have liked that. But you didn't have two scholars who were doing that. Maybe Liquid Zulu is something.
It was a little bit more. It was a little bit more of a.
It was contentious, yes.
Yeah.
And so it ends up just showing how ridiculous some of these hypotheticals are. It did not talk enough about the principles that I would like to see. And ultimately, it's all about, would you let a homeless person go into a public school, since public school isn't really legitimate property? There's arguments about that, but that argument about like private property and what it really is, could the government really own property? Those are scholarly discussions that should happen in a scholarly framework by scholars. And Dave Smith is not a scholar, as good as he is in other ways.
If you feel that scholarly, like it has to be done that way, that's a framework that you're setting. Dave does not fit that criteria. You're right. Absolutely.
And he'll admit that himself. He's honest enough.
Absolutely.
And I don't even know if. Yeah, exactly. And Zulu, as smart as he is, I don't know if he's an actual scholar either. But either way, I lose patience with those kinds of debates, because ultimately it's just two sides just digging in on either side. It doesn't seem to get anywhere. And I don't really know that it's that important anyway, because
I agree.
Most people who support either side are not going to change their minds. And if changing minds is the goal, it ain't going to happen. So I'm sad because two very smart people who I like to follow on both ends kind of just clash, and they clash to me unnecessarily. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
I absolutely agree with your point about the clashing, but you know what? They actually agreed to do it. And I think maybe taking on that challenge is what's admirable about it too. Whether, you know what I mean? Because they still get to share their opinions, and whether we adopt parts or not, just that they had the conversation itself. How many people say, I'm not going to platform you, or I won't have you on my show because you're a leftist or something. It's like, I get it, but like at least they did talk to each other. So to your point, I think it did get a little bit too in the weeds, but I like that the ideas were that. I'd love to see a second one go, what do we agree on? And how can, like, give us 3 points that Zulu and Dave can agree on, anti-war, whatever, and just start there maybe, and then maybe they can build something together outward. That would be a really nice way.
Yeah. The question I'd love to ask any of these libertarians is, suppose you weren't living right now in this time, 2025. Suppose you were living at a time when it was very clear that the transition to free society was well underway. Not there yet. The world is not free yet. But it's not today, but it's some X years in the future.
Well, for
And
example,
anyone who looked around,
the AI executive order gets canceled. Palantir loses its contract. We get rid of 702. I'm just saying, like, if we could at least get rid of the camera surveillance part, for example, that would be a great start, right?
there's definitely not that. And you have, let's say, enclaves around the world where they are free territories actually living under, a free society and a free legal framework. But again, the world is not a free place yet. But clearly in this world, I'm speculating, the trend is well along the way and utterly,
10%,
completely,
that's
100.
a huge wave. 10% would be a huge wave. Just to say.
Well,
anyway, but yeah.
And let's say they're at that point, but also, and this is very key to this theoretical I'm constructing here, the point we're at is utterly, completely, 100% unstoppable unless an asteroid hits the Earth. The trend in place, let's say, is seen by any libertarian or any social scholar as, yeah, statism is over. It's just not wound down yet, but it's clearly on its last legs. Free societies are proving themselves. Yeah, clearly we're in a major trend here. Here's my question. If that's the place that the Dave Smiths and the Zulus and everyone else who's libertarian messenger were in, would you still be messaging the same way as you are now? Or would you have a different strategy? And I'll just give you examples. Would you still be advocating for a free society, knowing that, yeah, we're about 20 years away, so nothing I say is going to matter, but you still want to talk about it anyway? Would you find other things to do that have interested you more that you put on the shelf because you were devoted to libertarianism, and now I can finally, go fishing, or I could be
start my chicken coop,
financial, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are about that speculation.
That's so interesting. That is such a unique take. What I think is libertarians are autistic and disagreeable, so they'd find something to bitch about. I'm just going to say that's probably what would happen because that's human nature too. I'm sorry, part of us, like libertarians are pattern recognition, foreseers only because they've seen what happened. It's happened. It's not like we're foreseers. We're just, we remember. We just remember that this is how it goes. Right. So what'll happen is like we would say it's going to be short lived, or we would find something. I think we would find something because part of that is some of us are just truth seekers. And for example, the Bible it has value, right? Like Job, take everything from him, keep working. You can't not stop working. That's what you have to do. You can't. Life sucks. It's going to shit on you and you got to get through it, right? That's a great thing. Did that actually happen to Job? Did it factually happen? Probably not. I'm not going to lie. Probably didn't. Okay. I don't think God and devil played with him. I think life just fucking sucked for him. I think it's a really good story, right? That said, both has truth and non-fact in it. You know what I mean? Because the value of the story is truth, but it's not factual. So we have to be careful. Like biblically is a big one for me because I'm not a Christian. I'm an anti-theist actually, which means, and what that means to me is not Hitchensian. What it means is I'm against the institutionalization of one's direct faith to whatever they have, because the institutionalization is the state. Catholicism is the fucking state. If you can't see that government or God became government, and that all that was government is God for atheists. How so? Prove to me that that's not different. They worship the same false idols. I mean, it's all the same thing. So, and I get amped up. I just get excited because these ideas just explode in me because we got to get these ideas out. Like these are epiphanies, These are humans. That's how we work. You know what I mean? We will always be that. So I don't know. It's just like, this is where I'm at with it, I guess. But I think we would find something to complain about. Or I think many of us would go, how can we be the most liberty on the forefront of the wave behind us? So I think more people would start homesteading, would actually do it, would actually knowing that it's unstoppable. I might buy a place in Tennessee next to my friend Brent and try to start a chicken coop, right? Because I know it's going to happen. But right now, with my uncertainty, I don't know if I want to risk thumbing my nose at the government and, risking that, risking that ultimate Ruby Ridge moment or a Waco or a Killdozer. We don't want those. So,
Yeah, I agree. That's the last thing you want to do, no matter where you are along that curve. You
right,
don't want to thumb your nose at a bully if you don't have like a
yeah,
backup plan, and
right.
and that's why. Yeah, I guess the way I look at it
So
as
to take a white
it's
pill, but real quick, but to take a white pill is you just be on the
yeah.
forefront of the liberties.
Uh-huh. You
Yeah, go
mean
ahead. Your take.
you mean taking actions? Is that's really what
Yes,
you're
taking
saying, right?
action to be the liberty you want to see. You have to be it. You can't talk it. You just can't. You
Yeah.
have to do it. You have to act it. It's actionable.
And I also noticed that's another attitude that I noticed that's different than the past, and that was especially, by the way, among the younger libertarians. This is so cool. They're It's not as if they're even saying it, but it's as if their attitude is just, oh, this is happening, dude. This is happening. We are getting to a stage at some point where there will not be a state, and I'm living, or at least I'm of the mindset that that's a done deal. The
Yeah, on
state
the
will
forefront of it.
not be
Yeah,
around. Right. I'm not thinking about it. And so what they're doing is just they're trying to build wealth on their own. They're doing the crypto thing. They're doing the homeschool thing. And that's
and
just it.
crypto allowed that.
It's like,
So, but crypto did really help facilitate the culture
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
decentralization by being a
Right.
decentralized thing. So yeah,
And that's the way that it's different, I think, in that
mm-hmm,
in the
one hundred
past,
percent.
we libertarians of the past really, really, really seem to be in this, well, almost for ourselves, another indoctrinated mindset. Namely, we, the libertarians, and those we convince, we have to be the ones physically dismantling the state, unscrewing the screws, taking down the bricks. Because how else are you going to get rid of the state unless you dismantle it? The younger crowd, it's more like, yeah, no, that's the state. That's like a typewriter. That's like a typewriter. We don't think about
Antiquated. It's
typewriters.
old.
We don't
Right.
use typewriters. We are way past typewriters. We're doing new things. We're doing word processing now. So why are you wasting your time with typewriters? I love
That's a
that
great
because
analogy. That's one of the
that's
best
that's
analogies
how
I've heard.
this that's how the state has to be looked. Well, let me tell you though, the typewriter analogy. Unfortunately, the libertarians are still thinking we are typewriter repairmen, right? We're
Right.
still going to work on
That's
that.
the party. I think that's the party. I don't think that's
That's the
libertarianism.
party, right?
I think that's the
And
party, and
and
that's
it's
where it gets flawed. That's where it's flawed, in my opinion.
it's a devotion to it because, well, again, it's like well, that's what we've always done. That's the only way to do it is to type out words on a thing that clacks and goes ding when you, and then we're going to debate over the intricacies of a typewriter roller. What's the best rubber for rolling paper, and what's the best paper stock,
But the best paper,
and the
vellum.
rest.
What kind of?
And then we look at them and say, yeah, but wait, there's PCs and word processors. So I guess analogously, I would want to say, at what point along the PC word processing evolution would you, the typewriter repair enthusiast, say, I think it's time for me to stop doing this? But no, the libertarians still say, no, we're going to keep on with politics because that's just how it is, because I'm not thinking about anything else. To me, that's what I see when I see political participation as an obsessive way of strategizing.
I love the analogy. First of all, it's so brilliant. The other thing is, I look at it as a decoupling versus just antiquated. Like it is antiquated, but
Yes.
the solution is just to not participate. Right? It's literally just to decouple. So what we would do, you and I start a little community. We still pay our taxes because we know that if we don't, they're going to come knocking down our door. Look, I paid every tax that I've ever had levied upon me. I'm not a rebel in that way, but I would like to not pay as much, right? Of course. So what I would want to do is find ways locally to reduce everything and build communities outward. And I think we've talked about subsidiarity is really. I think subsidiarity is what's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of governance because humans have a hierarchical just from father to son. You know what I mean? There is an evolutionary value and something built in. I think it's wired. So I think subsidiarity is where it's going to be best. Is local towns going to have all the power? Maybe give a little bit bigger for the water rights for this little area for a region or a section. Maybe grow out that way. I don't see it completely going away though because I don't think humans are capable like I don't think all humans are capable of breaking the way we do, because I think it does require a weird neuroses. Like, it's like ge- geniuses are crazy, right? Brilliant people are crazy. I'd like to think as crazy adjacent. That's what I think. We're crazy adjacent, but we're brilliant, because I have talked to so many people. And look, if you talk to any of them, they can articulate almost any point of libertarianism when you talk to people who are actually in this world.
Yeah, and
So
part of it's imagination too.
yes, it is.
It's we've always seen hierarchy, and it's hard to just in our minds to make the simple but elegant split of hierarchy between hierarchy you consent to and hierarchy you don't consent to.
Right.
And when you look at it in that very simple way, you realize, oh, hierarchy I don't consent to is the state. Hierarchy I consent to is a job,
Governance. It's
hiring a
government
lawyer.
versus government. Like, that's really what it
That's
is.
it.
When I see a leader digging a, like, let me give you an example. You want to know who I honestly think could be president next year or next time? Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe could absolutely galvanize this country. I know that sounds weird, but he's the dirty jobs guy, right?
Okay.
He's the guy who does all the dirty jobs. Like, he goes into sewers and like talks about the Americans making all the things and going into the dirty pits underneath the underworld, and the makers of the world. The ones who hold it up. He's so close to these people because he actually gets in there and gets his hands dirty with them. So it's kind of like being involved with it would make him look good. So when you see a leader, I know a leader when I see one, because they're leading, they're doing, not because they're telling me to do something, not because they're standing on a soapbox. They're digging the ditch, and I go, shit, there's an extra shovel, let me help. And now you got two people digging a ditch, and it gets dug twice as fast. Then a third guy comes in. That's how that has to be. It has to be done. We have to recognize between ourselves, go, that guy's got something. And that specific thing he has, we don't have to give him everything because he has that one thing. We just take that one thing. Like ideas. Jordan Peterson has been trashed the last year or so, but his previous work is brilliant. So why do I want to shit on Jordan Peterson now and say he's not the guy he was? No, I go, he had such brilliant moments. Let me pick what he had that was brilliant, shine, make that shine, and just ignore the other stuff. It's wheat and chaff, right? We just separate, we just ignore it, and they decouple. So instead of looking, once again, people holding the belief, don't look at the person. The idea is the value. The person is the value for being, but the idea is the value for existing. Like, I don't know. It's just, that's how I see things from different angles. I don't know if it even makes sense. I got to be honest, Mark. I don't even know.
It does make sense. And what I like too is thinking about how you mentioned personal, and I had mentioned this on a previous podcast where, for me, the discussions about libertarianism, trying to get a newbie to kind of see it and to help them, like we were saying, hold their hand mentally through this process. I find that to be gratifying simply in the sense of I'm helping one person. I'm helping that person. Why is it good? Because it was good for me. I'm grateful that circumstances converged for me that led me to realize that I should clear this fog of statism out of my head, and I should realize the state is illegitimate. Has it changed my life, like financially? Probably not. Has it changed it personally? No. But it's changed it in the sense that now I understand I was in sort of, you might say, a psychologically abusive relationship or a cult, and now I'm not. I'm happy about that. And every libertarian I know would also never go back to wanting to be blind again, to take that blue pill and be ignorant. So when I convince someone else or I help them get more skeptical, I feel good that I've helped them, that person. That's what motivates me to talk about it to others. I've actually dispensed with any notion in my head that the value I'm bringing is moving the message forward or changing society or shifting it a little bit. No, I don't think that, because I don't really think that's how it's ultimately going to happen. It's going to happen by exit strategies and one person at a time.
It's going to be one person at a time you're going to connect.
Exactly. And I find that to be easier.
That's podcasting. I mean, look, I've been doing this 5 years. I got 250 episodes, about 500 hours. I'm a nobody still, man. It's a grind, and I've spoken. You've seen the list. I've spoken with some really interesting, crazy, unique individuals. Now that doesn't make anything. I think you can still earn it. I really think that if you put the time in, you can. And some of us can do it. I almost quit about a month ago. I almost quit, and it's kind of interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's like, it is, for me, it is the message, but it is the message to one. So for example, I talk about a lot of topics. One of the topics I talk about is suicide. I lost a friend at 27 to suicide. He texted me the morning he did it. He just said, "Where are you?" And I remember looking at the text and going, I can't handle him right now. I remember, I remember that. And I will never forget that. So when anyone has the slightest cry of help, I am on it, and I ask people not to cry wolf about it, because I can't not say no when that opportunity arises that I could try to save a life. Um, so that's an extreme. So let's just do that. Let's back it up for libertarian ideas. Can't we do the same thing? Can't we just talk you off the ledge? Come on back off the ledge, man. Come back to our side. So, and I think that's by being present. You know, it is one-on-one. It's I'm not gonna move 100 people tonight. You and I are gonna talk, and one person's gonna go, "Wow, those two guys got off on some weird angle thing," and I'm gonna follow that. And that's all we need. That's it. That's all. That's all we need. But that is the message moving forward, in my opinion. So it's like I feel like it's both. But I'm not the angel of the message, right? Like I'm not the one to. I'm not the carrier of. Like I'm happy to be part of it. I want to be part of it, but I don't have to be the. You know, like some people want to be the best, the most libertarian. I don't. I just.
Well,
this is good enough for me. You know. This
yeah,
is
and I think that's you might say that's grounded. I think you have to look at it that way, especially because of the psychology of it. Let me explain that.
Please, and you.
If we think about,
before we continue, you had a 23-part on the psychology of authoritarianism,
yes.
correct? So share a little bit about that. Obviously, it's your audience, but if people listen, I'd love to hear just that little part and then go into that.
Sure. All right. So think about, and I credit Larkin Rose to giving me this idea as analogy. We need analogies to help crystallize things. Think of statism as a monstrous tree in the forest, okay? And we'll assume that it's a tree that you want to, what's the word? You want to take it down. You want to,
you want to chop it down.
You want the tree to fall. Okay. Now, a person who knows how to do that knows how to do it. They make a wedge at a certain part of the bottom of the tree, and there's something else they do. I'm not sure what it is, but it's preparatory work. Once they've done what they do, they can actually walk away. And a bystander might say, "You didn't knock down the tree," and you would say, "Oh, just give it about 10 minutes," right? And then once that first cracking starts, right, the inevitable is going to happen. That tree is coming down. Okay. You asked about my 23-part Myth of Authority series. Essentially, it makes this case as let's say a final conclusion, if there is one. It's that the nature of psychology, the nature of man, the nature of praxeology, which is economics, all of these natures of the beings we're talking about, ourselves, the common man, politicians, law enforcement, whoever it is, their very natures as human beings, coupled with the new situation of the technology of the internet, those two things together is the wedge cut.
I agree.
So the tree of statism is coming down. You don't see it yet because we're in the early stage of that curve. We're just in the early stage, but we are on that curve. We are not on the curve. We are on the curve. 20 years ago, we were not. 10 years ago, I would say we were not. Somewhere in the 5-7 years ago, we started. Not because libertarians were active, not because of any other reason, but because of the confluence of the technology of the internet destroying or nearly destroying the ability of propaganda to do its job, coupled with the natural nature of human beings. That tree's coming down. Now, it may take a couple of generations, but it is coming down. Nothing the libertarians can do is going to change that. Nothing the statists can do. So if you stand at the bottom of the tree after it's been wedged and you try to stop it with your hand,
you're not going to fill it back in with glue and
ain't going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, nothing's happening to stop it. But you know what else? The libertarians walking on the opposite of the tree and pushing real hard, that don't matter either.
Bad. Right, that doesn't help anything.
That's messaging. That's messaging. The attempt to push faster a dynamic that is already underway. So I say, if you want to push, do it because you're helping one person. Do it because you are helping one individual person wake up. Don't kid yourself into thinking collectively we're going to make it happen faster. The guy trying to stop that tree and the guy trying to push that tree are not part of this equation. Nature is part of it, the nature of psychology. Now, the series gets much deeper into exactly why that is. So that in your mind, if you wanted to take the time, you could prove to yourself, oh, I get it. We really are on the transition to a free society. It is unstoppable. Again, unless there's a nuclear war or an asteroid hits, but I'm not talking about outside forces because let's face it, if you do the wedge cut and then an asteroid hits, you didn't knock down the tree.
Well, you did. The tree got knocked down.
By some others. But anyway, that's the long and short of it. And that's why I consider it a massive white pill, that I consider us on the road to a free society already.
And you literally, I was just going to say, man, you are really white pilled, Mark, because all I see is technology being used to manipulate and confuse us. So this is what I actually foresee. I don't foresee AGI. I see AI becoming so good that it tricks everyone. And they're just going to say that AGI happens, and they're going to say AGI made this decision. No, some fucking douchebag in the corner made that decision. They're just going to say the AI did it, and you're going to buy it because we have good AI to trick you into thinking the AI actually made the decision. Like, show me the dot matrix on that where it printed out what the decision was.
Said that before.
Yeah, yes, you know what I mean? Yes. Like, so I agree. To your point, let me black pill a little bit. I grade it a little bit, but let me give you the lighter side of that. There's this thing called the Dunbar number, and I'm sure you've heard of it. And the Dunbar number is the number of people that can be associated with each other. So basically,
I have heard
you
this.
directly know 20 people. You might casually know 30 more, and it's like concentric circles of knowledge, right? The more you get away from that central number, the less you're connected to that person. The easier it is to create tyranny and to create the state and to talk them away from the center. I think that the Dunbar number, I think 150 is about the biggest. If you notice, gorillas and chimps don't get bigger than 30, 40 in a group, right? It becomes unsustainable. And I think that's what libertarianism is, a 40 group person, right? I think that technology can make that bigger, make it an exponentially larger number, maybe exit by 1,000. So instead of 150, you get 150,000 people who, through technology, know each other as well as they would the 150. Therefore, because of those connections, why would I aggress against you? I like you, Mark. I met you. We've broken bread. We know each other. So the more we know each other, the less I'm going to do that. And this is another thing. I think that the government is going to have these immigrants, whatever you want to call them. And I'm an immigrant. I'm a first generation American. Thank God I'm here. Okay. But the ones illegal, whatever, bad, they're going to give them pathway to citizenship in the military. They're going to keep those troops home watching their American citizens to whom they are not connected. They're going to be American citizens not connected to Americans. And those are the ones that are going to be able to easily knock down your door and then violate your Fourth Amendment rights, because my neighbor wouldn't. But the guy in another city would. You know, it's like, think about it like football teams, right? Who toilet papers your house? Not your teammate. The rival guy does. So the way I see this, I honestly think that they are using these things to make us obviously keep us less connected. And to your point, we connect to one person. That bond is stronger than 10 people who would jump on casually. Because they're going to email you and they're going to follow up and go, oh my gosh, what else you got for me? Oh my gosh, Rothbard? You want to send me an Anatomy of the State? Oh, Mises? Oh, you want to send me a little Hoppe? Come on, let's go. That's how you get it. You're so right. This one-on-one connection. And that's the only way it grows. The only way it grows is one at a time, like a step ladder.
You bring up such an interesting point, and that is how, because you mentioned you're kind of introducing a black or gray pill, but there's sort of a white pill aspect to it. And that it got me thinking as you were illustrating it, how when we're thinking about black pills, when we say that, what we're talking about is examples like you brought up, like can they use AI to dominate or sort of manipulate us even more? Or can they tax us more? Or can they make a war over here? And it is true. And I hope that when I'm focusing a lot on white pills, I'm not leaving the impression with an audience that I disregard the fact that there are negative things the state can do. Yeah, I actually kind of know that the state can be bad and can do evil things. And also, if we put our mind to it, we can imagine the things they can indeed do, especially when the news is covering things. So now Trump may be close to declaring war on Venezuela. that's a
Well, if it
bad
wasn't
thing.
for those narco terrorists and all the fentanyl not coming
He
from
wouldn't have
there,
to.
Mark,
Yeah.
it wouldn't happen. Come on.
I know. I mean, the guy's just doing his best, right?
Weapons of
Um,
mass destruction.
uh, and we could think of any black pill we want by just imagining it, and we would have a plausible reason to predict a bad thing. And I do not fault that, because we have to, again, be grounded in reality. Bad things can happen. To me, though, and I guess this is just my nerdy side, is that doesn't interest me too much. I pay attention to it. I'm not ignoring it. But I can't do anything about that. I
You
acknowledge
can only
it happens.
expose the truth. You can't.
You can
You
only
can't
expose
just tell people everyone's lying. You can only expose the truth.
it. Expose it, correct.
Right.
So if there's
I'm with
value
you 100%,
to it,
by the way. I want to be clear that I wasn't trying to make it in any kind of way like that. You're 100% correct. The white pill,
yeah,
actually, for me, to your point, is I love how you saw what I could see as manipulation. You saw it as the exposing of, because look
yeah,
at Gaza. Look at what happened. Look at all the social media and
exactly.
things, and how many needles have been moved with visuals that we've had from social media.
Right,
It's pretty powerful.
right.
Yeah,
And
you're
I think
absolutely right.
this is one area where the libertarians sometimes drop the ball a little bit. They're really good at exposing the black pills, meaning exposing the terrible things the state does. Unfortunately, their habit is to say, so, in other words, since the government does or can do or might be doing bad things, here's the next step. And guess what? The next step is politics.
Them.
Vote libertarian.
Yep.
Vote libertarian. Or
My side.
let's get this guy
My
out.
king.
Yes.
Right.
Instead of saying, and this is where principle comes in, instead of saying the whole reason that's possible is because you empower them and you give them power of coercion over people. You caused this. It's not the state. It's you. Your mind did it by believing you need political leaders. You did it. So they don't connect the root cause, which is this belief in authority, to the outward terrible bad thing. So to me, that's a little bit of a misstep on strategy.
Perfect. Let's do it. I went on Facebook literally 2 days ago and wrote, this is all I wrote. You all voted for this. That's all I wrote.
Bingo.
You all
Right.
voted for that. I didn't say what. I didn't say who. I said you all voted for this. I got both sides of it, man. I'm telling you, I've got both sides. And I got, oh, Trump is going to blow up those damn narco terrorists, and he's turning the economy around. And then you got you libtard, and then you get the other side going, oh, well, if Trump wasn't spending so much, the Democrats would give us our entitlements back, and they take care of our American citizens that are hurting. All this bullshit. So back and forth, I go, whether you voted right or wrong on the wrong side, you voted. You made this happen. You all voted for this. Win or lose, because you're in the system of the vote, whether of the lesser of two. You don't win every time, but you still voted for it. You still voted for it because you participated, to your point.
Yeah. And notice how the black pill approach, meaning, picking out the individual bad things the government does, can do, is planning to do, whatever. It does have that grounded in reality aspect to it. I'm talking about current events now. I'm talking about Venezuela. I'm talking about the Fed. I'm talking about Gaza. So you do seem like a person. We come off as people who are grounded, and we're talking about current events like we were supposed to do in civics class, right? And that's great. I mean, again, I applaud the idea of being connected enough to know that you know what's going on in the world. This is what's hard about the white pill side. If there is a challenge, it's that realizing that with black pills, you're always talking about the immediate, the short term, what's happening now or in the next couple of years. With white pills, you really are looking at trends and positive things that are really more long term. But what's hard to convey sometimes is that it is just as grounded in reality. Just as grounded. It isn't theoretical. It's not pie in the sky, right? So again, the white pill series goes through this, but when I say we have already started the transition to a free society, it's not because Mark woke up today and say, oh, the sun is shining and the birds singing and I'm just a happy-go-lucky guy, and I'm going to say, we're on the transition to a free society because I just like smiling. And if you think different, that you're entitled to think different because maybe you don't feel so good today. No, it's nothing like that. Right. It's the reality of psychology, technology, and the merging of those two. But that sounds abstract. So it takes a little bit of thought, just like with wedging that tree. Only a person who really kind of knows trees would know why that wedge causes that tree to fall, because I don't know. I don't know enough about it. And that's why psychology and the confluence that I mentioned, that took me kind of a month or two to really internalize, to realize, oh, I see it now. These puzzle pieces have come together. Now I see very clearly, and by the way, I can't unsee how we're on this transition now.
I love that you see this. I love that you have this vision of it. I can't be there with you, but it's not because of lack of wanting to be. I just see things from a darker side, I think, and that's a whole other, that's probably more of a personal,
yes.
positive personality thing than a thing. But that's what I'm saying. I love the way you look at this because it is true. It only goes one of two ways. For me, though, state only grows. It never ever shrinks. It only grows. So to start it means that it's going to be bigger later. I don't think there's any way of it ever not going that trend other than a reset or revolution kind of thing.
Okay, I do disagree with that, but let me ask you a question. You said the state always grows.
Yeah.
If the state always grows, explain to me the fall of the Soviet Union, because that state did not grow.
Absolutely.
That state disappeared peacefully.
And the fall of the British Empire in America. I mean, revolution is what caused it, right? So I would
and
argue
slavery
that
too.
I would argue that either economic or other forces caused a collapse outside of the state control. So if they can't manage at all, it has to collapse, right? Like, I mean, it's just like anything. If you don't manage resources, it's going to go away. So I would argue that state grows until it fucks up to the point where it collapses, right? So it probably, as it maybe a more honed point, it's supernovas. It starts as a sun, it grows as a supernova, and then it blows up and then crumbles into a black hole. Because to your point, I think states do not live. They do not last forever. Nations cannot last forever. So I do think it's more of a state starts, grows, blows. So it's almost like maybe a cyclical kind of fourth turning kind of thing with statism as it would be. But I guarantee here's the great thing. When alcohol stopped being attacked from prohibition, they went to reefer madness. Why? They needed a fucking job. They had unemployed alcohol chasers that weren't chasing alcohol anymore. What are you going to do? Give them something else. So just let me ask you, and this is all I ask, is to counter your point about the state, the $100 billion that are going into ICE through 2028, when they get all the people that they got, what are they going to do next? Because they need a job and they've got the money. So guess what? Homegrown first generation right here, son of a Nazi or grandson of a Nazi, right? Like real easy, he was a Nazi collaborator, for fuck's sake. He's a grandson, so it's not, I don't actually see that. I don't see it in people. I see this in groups. And to your point, when we connect one-on-one and we can change a mind, we have an ally. But when groups carry pitchforks and torches, everybody loses, man, because it's mob mentality. That is not thought. That is zero thought. So I guess that's how I have to look at it from that perspective. That doesn't mean it has to end. I'm fighting for it to shine the light to stave it off. But if it's given, it has to go through those cycles of growth and then collapse, I think, to your point. So thank you for letting me hone that a little bit better.
Well, let me compliment you, because you came real close, and this is like so close and so awesome in how you thought it through. You came real close to one of the key insights of the series, which is the state is just human beings. We know that. But now we have to really internalize that. Human beings exist and institutions exist in environments. Okay? And that sounds like a simple thing. It exists in an environment. But it's very profound, because that immediately erases any notion that the state can do anything it wants whenever it wants. It can't. So a great example of that would be the fact that today, if I wanted to be king of America, the royal king of America, that would actually not be something I could do. Why? Because the environment in modern America is not an environment that's conducive to royalty. Now, if someone wanted to be the king of, Finland, because I think they have a king, it might be possible if you were in that bloodline. Why? Because the environment in Finland is conducive to a royal king. If I wanted to be the pharaoh of the United States, I couldn't do it. If I wanted to be the pharaoh of ancient Egypt, That might be possible because that environment. So, in any given point, in every given territory, the state can only exist within the framework of the environment that it exists in, and it has no control over what the general environment is. Okay, with that as a backdrop, it confirms what you just said with the cyclical idea, because remember, initially you said the state always grows. You made that statement.
I did. I absolutely did.
But then, as it turns out,
completely over my skis on that one.
but notice what the insight you came to was that no, the state actually can go downhill and disappear like the Soviet Union. But why? Why did it grow? Why did the Soviet Union come into being? Because the environment was ready for it. Why did it persist for 70 years? Because the environment wanted it. Why did it go away? Because the environment was no longer conducive to it. Statism is no different than a raw slab of meat in the sun. Flies are going to go to that slab of meat.
My mom's grandfather always said politics was the same pile of shit, but different flies.
A pile of shit or meat, it works the same way because you get,
Same thing,
but that's
right?
the environment.
Same thing, man.
When you take away the meat, the flies don't come. The environment that I'm talking about in statism is the belief in authority. As that
you're
erodes,
a vegan all of a sudden, Mark.
no, that I cannot be. I am genetically a carnivore. Oh yes, I am very much a carnivore. I like it medium rare. Thank you very much.
Amen.
That's the environment I better be in.
Amen.
But then that's the point then, is that as we have the reality today of technology, of the internet, essentially kneecapping propaganda. Well, I'm sorry, but propaganda, that's the meat on the slab. If that's going away, the flies don't go to it. Now, that's a long-term thing. That's a couple of generations we're talking about. But the belief in authority is eroding because propaganda is eroding. And that, despite any other area where you could say, well, that's not I have a different opinion. Okay, you could have a different opinion about a lot of stuff, but it's really hard to have a different opinion that propaganda is not as efficacious as it used to be.
It's certainly not as efficacious as it used to be. But I can tell you that, well, this is the funny thing. So the CIA used social media to create all the color revolutions in the first place. They used social media to create uprisings. Then they realized, oh shit, we just created the environment for a social uprising in the United States. Instant censorship, purchased by Larry Ellison of TikTok, purchase of CBS by Larry Ellison. Elon Musk giving away Twitter. I'm sorry, Elon Musk has given away Twitter to the federal government. I understand the free speech part. He's allowing us to speak more to just create a more accurate list of each of us. That's just my opinion. Now, it's not unlikely. How many government contracts does he have? Let's be honest. He's just himself. And once again, let me take a step back from the man. The man's brilliant, okay? The man is a brilliant man, but he has to be in bed with China to start his electrical infrastructure. Look where China is now because of that, because of his letting them do it, right? Like, and I'm not saying he shouldn't. I believe in free market and all. That's not what this is about. But if we're talking about the current world the way it is, that guy shouldn't be our ally if he's giving everyone else our stuff or something. It's like he did it for him, though. So we just have to realize everybody's in it for themselves. So the bigger that person is, the more challenging they are as a formidable adversary. They don't have to be the enemy or the opponent. We have healthy friction competitions all the time between people. So I think both can exist,
Yes. And, this is not a tangent, although it sounds like it. One of the most profound reasons that all of that's possible, someone like Elon Musk and the various things he does, or anything, pharmaceuticals, whatever the topic is because of the idea of intellectual property. The fact that that is seen as a valid form of property, and you have patents and copyrights, that alone is one of the key pillars that holds up all of that edifice. Because if ideas were just something that you could not own legally, then the competition would cause people not to be as wealthy, generally speaking, as these people, which means they wouldn't have the influence that they have politically or in any other way. So oddly, something as seems to be unrelated as intellectual property is actually one of those pillars that holds up the state.
First of all, brilliant. I'm just going to say, bro, that was absolutely brilliant. I'm glad you went to this tangent. IP is my last pillar to knock down. I'm
Okay.
struggling with IP now, not in the patent bullshit. Clearly, when a drug company changes one molecule, and then repatents it, that's such fucking horseshit. Okay, that's just absolute horseshit. However, as a creator, I hate to say someone steal everything and just say it's mine and sell it as theirs. And if there is an IP, I'd love to think that person's would credit me with it or something. But if, like, here's an example. Who's Andrew? I'll get you in touch with the IP guy. Matthew Sands. Do you know who Matthew Sands is?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, he's British. I could probably connect you with him. He wrote this great book about IP. And my question is this: he says you can't copy like a Corvette, but you can copy a book. So if I wrote a book, and this is where I'd love to ask you, this is where I'd like to push on you regarding IP. Do you see a difference between IP like of a drug or an idea like a book or something like that? Where, for example, the first year a person write that book, let that be theirs, but then it's out to the world. But that is a regulation, so that does impede somewhere, right? Someone else's. So I'd love to hear the IP because we talk about property rights, yet intellectual property is not property to us. It's interesting. It's not wrong. It's interesting, right? Just the way that we look at
Well, yes, one of the first ways to attack that is to realize that the word property was hijacked onto ideas.
intellectual
It
property.
didn't
Yes,
used to be
correct.
like that.
It
That's
used to
right.
mean
So
physical private land property only at that point.
it really means, yeah, exactly right. It means conflictable
Yeah,
resources, anything that.
they manufactured our consent by they conflated property with not property.
Correct, correct. So by labeling it intellectual property, it's an immediate enticement to the liberty movement because everything's about property for us, right? Private property is sacrosanct.
Property
It's
should
like
equal
you
voter,
don't violate.
to be honest, in my
Right.
opinion. But
So if right, so if you call something intellectual property, we have to run and defend that. So it's really not property. Property can only be tangible property, and the reason is because you can't own ideas. You can't own a pattern. So yes, it is true. You could write a book and you could arrange words and letters in a certain configuration and call it Atlas Shrugged or call it Gone with the Wind or whatever it is. And you own that physical book. You own the script or whatever it is, the sheets of paper that you typed up. You own that and the ink on it. But you don't own an empatternment or an empatterning as an abstract. Now, if you claim to own it by law, because we have intellectual property, that automatically, you can't get around this, it automatically means you now have an ownership interest in everybody's paper out there. Why? Because you may tell them you may not make a copy that has that impatterment on it.
because that protects
So
yours then, because you then enforce that rule on others because you're doing it for yourself.
correct. So you can't escape the idea that you now partially own everyone's paper or any manufacturer of paper because you can tell them what they can or cannot put on that paper. So what it really boils down to is if there's any purpose for law, if there's any purpose for justice, it's to make sure that conflicts are minimized. So the only thing that applies to conflict would be physical objects because you can't use the same object. Two people can't use the same object at the same time. Whereas with an idea or an impatterning of a book, a song, an invention, a drug compound, whatever called chemical compounds, those are ideas. That's an impatterment. Someone else could use their private property and put it together in the same way, and it does not violate your private property. Now, it's very easy then to introduce other ideas into that don't belong in there. For example, accreditation. You mentioned before, if I write a song, I'd hope somebody would credit me. Yes, that's absolutely true.
I conflated those two. I absolutely conflated those two. Right.
And it's very easy to do that because if we put out Jake writes a great new song and someone else says, I just wrote this song, they're actually lying. They're lying.
Right.
Jake wrote it, not them. If they perform it as theirs, that would be fraud because they are defrauding their customers. There's already laws about fraud. So you don't really need IP.
Perfect. So that's exactly what it was. And that's the question is, can we circumvent the IP objections because of the fraud and copy laws we already have in place that are outside of what IP is? It's just general fraud general lying, right? You know what I mean?
Correct.
So you
Correct.
actually solved that. Thank you for clearing that.
And also some people sometimes think that without copyright or intellectual property laws, you wouldn't have creativity, you wouldn't have inventions. Here's how I look at it. Today in this world with IP, you're an artist or you're a creator, you're an inventor. List for me the tool belt that you have. What are the items in your tool belt? Well, it's all ideas that are public domain, meaning they're so old that they're not under copyright or IP anymore. So they're old ideas. You have that in your tool belt.
Mickey Mouse, the first Mickey Mouse black and white drawing is now
Exactly. So those are all in your tool belt, but they are older.
Right.
And also, newer ideas are in your tool belt that you have gotten permission from through licensing from inventors or people who, like J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter. If you get her permission, okay, that's in your tool belt. That's your tool belt. Old ideas plus ideas that you have permission to use, which, by the way, that's not a lot in your tool belt because you don't have permission for everything. You have a permission just for the narrow few things you've gotten permission. Okay, we're finished with that. That's your inventor or creator's tool belt. In a society with no IP, what does your tool belt look like? It is literally every idea ever conceived by man. That's your tool belt. I think you'd have a lot of innovation in a world free of IP just on that alone. Now, does that mean that if you write a song and you put it out there, that other people can copy it immediately? Yes, that is true. If you're noted as the first ever to write it, you're the guy who wrote it. Someone who claims to have written it first, that's a fraud, right? They're lying, and you can demonstrate that through some kind of, right? And then you become known as the person who wrote that song. Now, it is true that you probably can't sell a lot of CDs in an IP world because anyone can copy it, but there's not going to be many people who could put on a concert like you, the creator. So Jake's concerts are just him, and he could charge, or he could charge for, whatever, subscription services where they get to see his first songs right before he puts them out. The creator in an IP-free society, it's on them to really figure out how to market themselves. There isn't, they really shouldn't have the responsibility.
See, this is the thing. We want to absolve our accountability and responsibility again. Once again, we're just going to concepts, right? All these concepts come back to these foundational things. We want to protect our thing because we can't create more than we can create. No, you can create whatever you want, man. Pull up just do it. Just do it, right? And I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I love it.
Yeah. So it is an interesting area that the libertarians have a hard time with. We never had a chance to talk about interests that you have that are outside libertarianism. Do you want to touch on a few of that, if you don't mind?
Well, okay. I have two lives. I have a previous, I have a show called Not Conscious. So at 13 years old, I had a near-death experience and I was ejected from a car. I left my body. I recall a memory of hovering over my body. And what's really weird, and I think let me share the story. It was at a baseball game. I went to a Phillies game and 4 of us were supposed to go. I was 13 years old, so I wasn't driving. 4 of us were supposed to go. Only 2 of us were able to go. So my mom let myself drive with this guy, even though she didn't want me to. So we got in some really old rickety cargo van for a catering van that we owned, that we had a catering company or whatever, or we worked at one. So we had pots and pans in the back, just some shitty lap belt that didn't even work on the 1978 cargo van. You know what I'm talking about? This is 1988 at the time. So we go to the game and we scalp our tickets. Okay. So if you remember the old days, you and I are older guys, there'd be a line of 50, 100 people. It wasn't online like it is now. There'd be 100 different strangers lined up. You go up to the first guy or whoever offered you the most, and you just sold them. And then they would get the most they could as the car behind them, right? So they literally buy and sell and buy and sell. It's just a whole row of people. So we scalp our tickets for cheap, $5 a piece or something. So we go to the game. It's the beginning of the second inning, and this young couple, mid-30s, maybe walks in, woman and a man. The woman sits next to me, and I'm a douchebag, so I'm like, hey, how much you pay for those tickets? Where'd you guys get those? Because I knew where they got them, clearly. She's like, oh, we bought them off the scalp. I go, how much you pay for those? And she's like, oh, $15 a piece. I'm like, we could have sold them to you for $5. I was like razzing them. I was just having fun, right? So I go home. On my drive home, I'm ejected from this car, get in a bad car accident. I get moved from one emergency room to a second. They're shoving a tube down my throat. I broke my femur. They're asking me what the game was, what the score was, keeping me awake and all this stuff. I end up falling asleep and I wake up, and the next thing in the morning, I wake up and my eyes adjust and there's a person sitting in a chair. And as I focus, It's the woman that bought the scalp ticket.
Oh my gosh.
And thought nothing of then. But after I share a little bit more, it does come full circle here because what are the odds of a person selling to a random scalper at a Philadelphia Phillies game of all places? 60, 70,000 people. This woman, she says she was a doctor at the hospital that I was sent to, and she saw me and she waited till I woke up. That's one hell of a coincidence. I mean, the odd, just when you add even that I was moved from a one emergency room to another, it even adds an extra layer of that probabilistic. You know, probabilistics, and statistics. This isn't probable. This is not probable that a person who bought a scalp ticket that I didn't sell it to her saw me at a hospital the next morning after I flew out of a car windshield. Like this stuff, it doesn't make sense to me. So I was able to put it to bed. It just was a weird story. So later on in my life, I got a little worse and worse. I didn't want to be here anymore, Mark. I got to be honest. We all go through it, right at 40. Just hit me like a ton of bricks. You know, for me, though, my rock bottom is I don't know if I want to be here anymore. It's better than loading a bullet or sharpening knives. You know what I mean? So I knew I had to address it right away. And I wasn't going to do it with some douchebag psychotherapist. Those guys are stupider than you and I, than half of our IQs. Psychotherapists and psychiatrists have their own problems to deal with. They can't work out mine. They're good for a talk, but they don't solve it. So I needed someone with more of the mental, what I thought had more oomph to it. I tried this thing called neurolinguistic programming, NLP. It's this thing where they do meditation, they go into subconscious, but they really articulate how you got blockages in your life. Why do you keep sabotaging? How can you not keep a relationship? Why do you keep losing your job? These types of things, all these things. Now, for me, it was different. I just didn't want to be here, right? So the guy looked, I was doing one of his introductory things. The guy had a degree in nonlinear mathematics and quantum mechanics. So worst case scenario, I'm paying a friend for an hour to talk. That's the way I saw it. I just thought I'd be like, hey, I could just shoot the shit with a guy who's really smart. You know what I mean? We could talk guns, we talk whatever. He was in the military in Britain. It's great. It's awesome. So no worries. So we sit there. I go in the first second I walk in and I look into his room. He's got a chair and a little like a love seat that I sit in, and he sits in a chair. He cocks his head at me as I enter and he goes, "You're different." And I think he just knew what to say. I'm not going to lie. But man, telling somebody who feels different that they're different when they've never saw them ever, and like the first thing they say, he had me hooked. I got to admit, he had me good. So waterworks, of course, because something's not right. And we start working. About a couple months later, he goes, "Hey, we're going to do a meditation, a guided meditation. You're on a beach and you pick up a rock. You look up and you see this feather." And I think of the feather from like Forrest Gump, the one that dances, something like that. And then you see these sheets of glass spinning in the sky and you see images in them. He didn't tell me what I saw. He just said, "That's what you see." So I see these images, and I remember you and I remember looking through windows, looking at TVs, like during the holidays. It's kind of like looking through glass to look through glass to see a picture or something. Something like that. I saw this vision, and I saw a black man behind a podium, a single microphone. He has this mannerism where he makes a gesture to his right, like shaking his hand, and then he makes a gesture to his left, like shaking his hand. And I saw a flash, and I like sat straight up, and it was 2015. I'm like, I just saw Obama get shot, and I literally, I had a tear. I felt whatever that was real. And he looks at me deadpan, and he goes, "That either will happen here or it happen in another dimension." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I've never been in this world. I don't know what this is. This is completely nuts, right?" So it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. Come back the next Thursday, sit down in his chair. He goes, "Hey, you heard what happened yesterday?" I go, "Yeah, there was a shooting or something." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You saw Dylan Roof, or you saw Clement Pinckney, the pastor in the Dylan Roof shooting. It happened the Wednesday after the vision I had." And I didn't know what to make of that when he told me that. I'd be honest, like, what am I going to believe that? I'm a skeptic, first of all. So for this to happen to me, I'm the perfect person to have this happen because I don't believe it in the first place. I still don't believe it. But I went to this video archive, and Clement Pinckney's in the state Senate in a suit behind a single podium. And he has this mannerism where he does this exact vision, and the hairs on my arm stand up without me, just me watching it. I knew that's what I saw. I knew it. I knew it. It actually ties back into IP. That wasn't mine. That was not mine. That was given to me. And I don't know if it was given to me or I met the frequency that it was at to see, if that makes sense. Now, I'm going to ask you to just take a step off the ledge with me and go into woo world and say, let's suppose that this is how it happens. So isn't every idea out there for you to find through your consciousness? So technically, to your point,
I see.
there is no IP. To your point, those ideas are already there.
Already
It's
out
like
there. I see.
it's like the
Interesting.
marble. It's like the David. The statue is there. You have to carve away what's not, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it
Yeah.
from a completely flip-flop point of view in that way. So to your point, intellectual property, from my perspective, from my experiences of having this, and I actually have psychic visions, it's horrific at times. It is not good. And we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end of the show, because I know you have a question for me. But but that's what it is. It's like it's not your idea to have. It's your idea to get to, but it's not yours to have. The ideas are there. I honestly think thoughts are outward in. I do think have you ever done an action that felt like someone pushed a button? It wasn't like you doing it. Like you were in a moment of Zen where you were just in the flow. And all of a sudden you do some weird erratic action. That wasn't you. That wasn't you. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't you. It was you with whatever the current of the flow was as well. Right? Like it's symbiotic.
Yeah, these experiences are such an interesting area because they clearly happen. And when I say happen, I mean they happen to you. You have the experience of them.
To the
right?
experiencer, they are real. 100%.
They are real.
Yes, correct.
Right. And that keeps us safe because as skeptics, we could say, well, right, but it may not be explained exactly like this person explains it. Someone comes in and says, well, what happened to you? You were abducted by aliens and they gave you this. Okay, well, I suppose you can imagine that's true, but they don't know that that's the explanation for it. It could be something else. You know, there's many ways that it could be explained. But the experience happened to you because we would presumably say you're not lying. And if you're not lying, then it happened. And there's so much about not just psychology, but the human mind and quantum physics and fields and frequencies. And I mean,
and
there's so much we know.
Not real. Like the experience was real. It doesn't mean the actual event was real. So if I say I saw this, that doesn't mean it happened. It means I experienced that vision. To your point, right? So,
and that makes it interesting. It makes it interesting to then speculate then how can something like that happen, assuming again that you're truthful about that. And because if you see somebody, yeah, I mean, so yeah, there you go. So the woman who was in that room with you was the same woman who you met at the scalping line, and it's like, okay, how can that be? It's like, well, we can speculate a whole lot, but the fact that it happened,
ticket off the guy who he sold it to. It's not like I met her at the scalping line. I met her in the seat.
Correct.
Yeah, it was even further apart, right? It's even further.
It was further. That's true. It's even further removed. So all you could say is, well, of course, I don't know. You admit, you're honest enough to admit, you don't really know how that confluence of events brought you to that experience. And yet it is fun to speculate because now science does know enough about something about the quantum world. To me, the quantum world is amazing because it's all about fields. And when you're talking about simultaneity and cause and effect, the quantum world kind of puts that on its head a little bit. And that could mean, I suppose you can imagine that fields or realms could somehow intersect in some way that's unexpected, and that could explain possibly some of these experiences. I'm not putting that forth as an explanation.
No,
I'm just saying, notice how there can be a connection to what we know primitively about that science.
It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain an idea without adopting it. And that's exactly what you just did, Mark. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
You literally can play in the sandbox. This is the point. We're not adopting these thoughts. We're playing with them. If something is a merit, we can put it in our pocket. That doesn't mean we have to, but we do need the idea out there to grab it. If we don't talk about it, it's not going to be out there for us to go. So this is the point. So it is my opinion that consciousness is an emergent property. There was a Big Bang thing. The universe self-organized over time, created little pockets of consciousness in individuals, became a global consciousness with enough of us growing to a certain level, exploding to the next level, that becoming a global consciousness, then with other worlds becoming a universal consciousness. That at that point, that consciousness brings life to a new consciousness. I don't know what that typically, now this is all theoretical. This is not, I'm not going to die on this hill. I'm only posing this as a thought, okay? But as an emergent property in a self-organizing universe, if you've ever seen fractals, fractals all the way down, my friend, the universe is organized in fractals. So why wouldn't consciousness? So consciousness evolves and merges. The explosion becomes the new universe with consciousness as a foundational building block of the new universe because it's now added to the collective. So the reality 2.0 is different than reality 1.0 because consciousness is now baked in to the second reality. Now, that then happens again. It does its same organizational growth, but now it's already within a simulation because the first emerged consciousness gave birth to a child consciousness, which is different and has different properties, just like a new universe would have slightly different properties. I think that consciousness then gets embedded. Now, we might be on reality 2 or we might be on reality 82. I don't know what reality we're on, but I think we're in the reality where people like me who can get hit in the head, people who can get abused and mentally whatever, they get broken to align with the consciousness field that's out there. And for me, I think people get hit in the head have precognitive ability. I think people who get physically abused have more, they can see people. And I think that's because they need somebody to support them as a child. So they have spirits that help. You know, invisible friends are real. Come on. Invisible friends are real. How dare you tell your little girl that her little friend Michelle isn't real? Come on. They absolutely are there. I don't know how. I don't know why, but they are. I don't really. And I was pretty atheist at one point. So it's not like, and I was raised Lutheran. So it's like I've run the gamut. I've definitely looked into this, but I'd love your thoughts on just how that perception is.
Well, when it comes to imagination, to me, that's what the child is doing. Of course, it is definitely more of a scientific way of looking at it. A child has imagination, and so
Or
when they
openness.
have a friend, what's that?
I call it openness. I mean,
Openness.
why
That's it.
why we teach our kids what not to do. We don't ever teach our kids what to do. Like, let's be honest. We usually teach our kids how not to be an asshole in society, how not to do something. You know what I mean? We hardly ever, we should do more of a white pill moment to your point, Mark. We should really be like, how can we better you versus stop touching that. Don't, like, in a way.
Right. I have to say, though, watching parents today, I do see more of an encouragement toward imagination and toward, finding what they like and finding what they're good at, as opposed to the older days, 50s and 60s, when it might have been more rigid, pick what you want to be and then you follow that path and you don't deviate. It seemed a little more rigid. Whereas today I think I observe that more. So I like that because I would want a child to explore anything that they can. Of course, things like public schools do not help that because those are rigid prisons
Indoctrination
essentially.
centers, yeah.
But yeah, well, back to the point of imagination, I've never thought of imagination being anything other than their ideas finding themselves and inventing things. But, I guess you can look at it as some kind of intersection with other fields or other ways of existing. Again, we're so primitive in our understanding of all that and quantum and everything that we don't really know. So we can't prove
I
any
do
of
not
that.
know.
But
I literally only pose ideas. I'm not, there is no,
of course,
I'm not
but
like
once,
that. It's not baked in now.
of course, but once again, the child's imagination, that's real. They are
Yes.
expressing a reality to them. And that can be a very beautiful thing, especially if they end up being inventive or artistic, because that's where that comes from. Whatever
The
that is,
openness,
and whatever
right.
it is about us, yes, and how
Yeah.
they connect to the world. Some people have a better, my wife's like this. She has a better sense of people. She can look at a person and say, all right, I want to
gotta
stay away from
it.
that
Yep.
guy. Or
Yep.
that person is a sincere, true person. Me, I tend to be idiotic that way. To me,
No, you're
I,
white pill.
I
No,
can't.
see, I love it. Your perspective is it's a great perspective. Yours isn't wrong.
Yeah,
It's perspective. You see it from the
it's definitely
positive.
different.
How can we make it
Right,
better?
right.
That's all. That's great. That's a way better way to live. I wish I could live more like that. I mean, sure, I might find a couple more bad guys because I look the world more negatively, but I also probably miss out on some greater opportunities because of it too, right?
That's possible. Yeah, that's a good way to
So
look at it.
it's all about personality. And I think what's great is when people like yourself, who's more white, you're more white pilled, I'm a little dark grayer. This actually works well because we're core aligned. So how could we possibly not find something that we could both agree with, considering our cores are pretty much, at least we're looking for the similar result.
Correct, correct, correct.
Yeah.
We're almost 2 hours in. I wanted to make sure we carve out time for anything that you want to either talk about or any topic that is of interest to you.
I wanted to share a couple stories, if I may, because this
Yeah.
is how it comes to me. I guess it's the best way to do it. So I was on a first date with my ex-girlfriend, previous girlfriend, and first date we're talking like, if you were going to have kids, what would you name? Blah blah blah. And she's like, if I had a kid, I was going to name my kid, but no, you never guess it. And I swear, I'm a pilot. Okay, so I went to Embry-Riddle. I'm a pilot. So what happens? Amelia Earhart shows up in my face. I see the woman in the scarf and whatever, and I go, "Is it Amelia?" And she goes, her eyes get fucking saucer dish, and she's like, "How the fuck?" She thought it was Amelia Bedelia. She thought of Amelia Bedelia. I didn't think of Amelia Bedelia, but the vision came to me. I had to translate it. It was translated through my perspective as a pilot that someone named Amelia was Amelia Earhart and not Amelia Bedelia. So even though I got it right, whatever the consciousness and field had to give it to me the way I understood it. So when I look at biblical verses, I think that's the problem. That's what makes me an anti-theist, is the human who wrote it down translated it through their perspective. It doesn't matter. It's already fallible at its onset. It's already not the word of God. The only word of God you can have is direct. If there is, right? If there, it has to be direct, because an intermediary does not see the world the way you do. So why would God speak to you through someone who had different experiences? It really isn't logical. If you were a God, would you want to have conflict that off the bat? Or would you want people who get along together to have agreements, right? Does it make sense, right? Because we're killing each other over each other's gods, right? Not together because of God. We're not together because of God. We fight over God in a weird way in this world, right? So it's a backwards way. So that's one way I'd like to share how I get a vision. So it may be correct, Amelia, but it wasn't Amelia Bedelia. It was my Amelia, how I got to Amelia, which is weird, right? But it still was correct. It was the right answer. The other one is this. This is the one where I start talking about external and simulation. You've been on a car ride. You're just driving along, lines on the highway. You're just in a zone. You're just driving. You don't even remember. You ever go to work? You look, how did I get here? You've done that 100 times. Now, you obviously were lucid and could avoid traffic at the time, but you don't think about it. You weren't consciously like, you're in the zone, right? So I'm in a 4-lane highway with an HOV lane to my left. And I'm in the furthest left lane that's not the HOV, and it's a very slight drizzle in Arizona. And I see a pickup truck in the HOV lanes, speeding, not speeding up, but going faster than we are. And I see in the rearview mirror, outside message. That guy's going to be a problem. I just said it. That guy's going to be a problem. My girlfriend's there. She can corroborate it. So then I sit there, and literally I'm standing, and all of a sudden I get a flash of this truck cutting in front of us across all lanes. I don't know why, but that's what I get. I instinctively go, this guy's going to get hurt. I let off the gas. I put my turn signal on. I go about 10 miles an hour slower. This is all very in a zone, right? It's very unconscious. I slowly move over. Up ahead, there's already an accident. None of us know there's an accident around the bend. There's already a 3-car pileup. The truck locks up his brakes, comes across, and actually hits the other car, like 3 cars over in front of us. I come up to a slow stop, literally where all the cars are piled up, and I go, "Are you okay?" I look at her. It's like I was instructed to let out, like a controller. It felt like a controller. And I'm not asking, we're so egotistical that we think, I think, therefore I am. If there is this kind of conscious field, maybe some of the ideas are out there, or there is something, right? So when you start making decisions, try to look inward to see from where those decisions are coming. Like I sense them sometimes like external, not internal, if that makes sense, right? So I don't know what that is. Once again, I only tell you I experience these things. I wish I could figure it out, because I'm the best person to have it happen to, because I really am a skeptic. I don't even believe half my stuff.
Well, that's the whole thing, is being open-minded, right? That you need. You have to say, why do I think this? What can explain it? Or if you finally don't know, then it's okay to actually say, I don't know. I know this happened, but I don't know why. Because that keeps your mind open to new ideas, because the minute you get entrenched into that, the ice forms around you and your mind is solid, it's like, well, how can new ideas get back in there? So it's good that you maintain that skepticism, but be open to the experiences themselves.
Yeah,
And they've obviously helped you.
we have to be open to these things. We have to accept them, and they're uncomfortable. But so's life. Life is. You do not grow without pressures to change you. You don't evolve without pressures. So you have to give them to yourself. The problem is we've taken all the pressures away from ourselves. None of us are growing. We don't even have relationships because we're too afraid. And not you and I. This is more younger generation now. The new generation. These kids aren't connecting the way we did. They're connecting through screens. That doesn't make it worse. But I remember, man, when I drank out of the same garden hose as my best friend down the street after riding bikes, like that's a bonding moment way more than like killing a Pokemon on a screen, in my opinion. Now maybe it is the same to them. Maybe I just don't understand that. But I do think that tactile, the more senses you get involved in your life, the more you can connect, right? If you can smell, touch, and taste, then you're 60% there, right? So it's just one of those things. So I don't even know where that came from. But anyway, that's that.
I
So
think I think that's a great observation.
and like it's funny because we talk about like borders, and I don't know what you are about borders. We could talk about that as libertarian stuff down the road. But like, the nation is an idea, and this America had some pretty freaking good ideas. I don't know how far back we to go. I'd like to even. We don't need a piece of paper giving rights either. Okay, granting rights. We don't need any of that. But the idea, if we don't have like-minded people, then we can't grow the idea, right? It has dissonance among the ideas. Now, that's not to say not have open ideas. We just pick the best one.
And I also like that fundamentally, almost all people have the ingrained or sort of natural idea that they do own themselves, right?
Yes.
Most people would
100.
not really want to submit to abject slavery.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't say, I'm going to rob my neighbor now. I mean, come on. Everyone I know and everyone I've always known is exactly like that. And guess what? They're not ANCAPs. So there does seem to be something internal. It doesn't mean that there aren't thieves out there. Sometimes I say that and people say, oh, you think everyone's perfect. No, I didn't say that. I said that everyone seems to have an ingrained personal attribute where they value their life and property. In fact, I could prove it to the extent of saying that if a thief steals $1,000 and he puts it in his room and he goes to sleep and he wakes up the next morning and finds that someone has broken in and stolen his 1,000, which wasn't his 1,000, he will feel put upon. He will feel robbed. So everybody does seem to have that internal nature.
Because you robbed his labor.
Property.
The labor to steal the money in the first place, Mark.
That's true. He robbed his labor. That's true. There is IP. Well, that's funny.
There's your natural rights argument right there.
Well, I am really glad to have had you on. I had a great time, and I'm also really glad that there's lots of topics we didn't get to, which means there's lots of chances for us to meet again, and I hope you will agree to come on again.
I would love to, and I would love to have you on and have you do some deep dives, maybe on specific topics, because we got to know you last time. So we're definitely going to work and collaborate in the future. I think we're going to exchange some people because I think both of us have spoken to some brilliant, amazing people that we haven't crossed. But it's so funny how you and I met. I met you through Shaka Mitchell, who I never met. He saw my podcast with Adam. He saw he was on your podcast, and you had Adam on. So that must have been how it happened. And then my friend Jason, obviously, or my old co-host, he goes on your show. I'm like, this is such a weird way how we even connected in the first place. So I'm just grateful and thankful that this happened. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Well, you asked about my white pill moment. I think you wanted to at least ask about that. I'm going to give it to you from a black pill.
I did. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
It's a vision. I'm standing on the ground. In the distance, I see a mushroom cloud. Closer, see another mushroom cloud. Closer, and then as that's happening, I start ascending off the ground, and I start seeing blips all over the world. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm ascending. That's what I get. Like, that's the feel. Like, I don't know the right word. I'm not a woo-woo guy. Like I said, ascension would be the best thing I could think of, as in, we just done fucked up the whole earth. We obliterate. What I mean is we are nuclear death. It was nuclear winter. That's what I saw.
Wow.
Right after that vision. Now, when I get these visions, they're not fun. I felt the barrel of a gun scrape my teeth when a person put it upside down in their mouth and said, just do it. Like I felt that. I did that. I can't explain that. I don't know what that is. I think the darkness just has a heart energy, so it comes through easier. That's why it's easier to see it. But that, it's hard to quantify energy, I guess, right? But anyway, so I see this vision, and then Annie Jacobs' book comes out about the nuclear war, about how you have 5 minutes and then everybody's going to fucking blow each other up. And literally what she wrote is exactly what I saw, and the arms stood up on my arms. You know what I mean? The hair stood up on my arms again. It can happen. It will happen. It also can be stopped. It can also be stopped. Just like your quanta, the probabilistics are there. It can happen or it won't. It could happen once. It could happen twice. It could happen any multitude of times, right? Because of what I saw, I am a staunch, devout, anti-war person. I will fight you face to face, but I will never send anyone to their death. I will never escalate anything to a point where others are going to be harmed. This is unacceptable to me. And I think that if it goes the way that goes, this earth doesn't ascend the way we're supposed to add to the consciousness. So my white pill is to keep us here so we can slowly evolve to ascend. It's just to keep us here. And I don't mean on a lifeline. I mean like thrive. I want us to thrive and prosper. I want worlds to see us. I don't want them to see us because of the devastation we can do. You've heard about like alien encounters starting when nuclear bombs went off and all. I don't want them to see us for that. I want to see us because we're glowing out of the beauty that we are, right? So there's my white pill, man. Let's do it.
Wow.
I'm so excited.
Wow,
Thank you so much, man.
That's since it's connected to nuclear fission or fusion, whatever that is, right? Doesn't that come like each atom like explodes to the next one?
Yeah.
So you made a white pill. You made a white pill that actually explodes like a nuclear bomb. I cannot top that. I'm sorry.
A white atom pill. Let's do it.
I'm not worthy.
No.
A white atom bomb.
Come on, man. Mark. First of all, I have not gotten in your series, but I know it's brilliant. I cannot wait. It's really a time thing, but I'm gonna start listening. Do you recommend going from the beginning to the end?
I would
Okay.
I would if you could.
So I'll do it. Yeah. So let's do that. But anyone can reach me, Mark Sean Puls. I've got a podcast called Knocked Conscious Podcast. And If by Whiskey's down there. If you see that, that's with Jake Day. You met Jake, and you'll have him on the show.
Yes.
Jason was the previous co-host, and you've had Jason on. So we're gonna be family, my friend. We're gonna be friends for a while, I think.
You are awesome guys, and I think you are good representatives of this thinking and this philosophy, because you are positive, you are white-pilled, even though you, like all of us, to see the negative out there. It's not stopping you. You're forging ahead, and you are keeping your principles, and that's important.
Last thing, Jason, our co-host, had his baby. He had his baby on December 11th.
Oh, he had his baby. Oh,
I can't.
Wow,
I know this is recorded,
news.
so I can say this, but he didn't tell me, Mark, just like he didn't tell me he was on your show, okay? I actually had, hey, did you have a kid? He goes, yeah, and he sent a picture. Come on, Jason. Be better, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you again.
No. We want the best for Jason and his family. Yeah, that's awesome news. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm real happy for them and for you. And again, folks, check out the great work that Mark puts out, all of which I've got linked in the show notes. And as usual, thanks to all of you for joining us today. Take care and see you next time.
Thanks so much to all subscribers and everyone who joined today. And remember, keep looking for those white pills.